from 1990, Arachnophobia. Now this movie is always, from day one, trailer one, has always been marketed as a thriller comedy. And that's kind of the reputation it always has. But it really builds the suspense great, and it's got a great sense of humor. And it was made by Hollywood Pictures, which is a division of Disney, but don't let that hold your judgment back from watching it. It's so fucking amazing. I grew up watching this movie, but nostalgia alone doesn't make me like it, because I took a huge break from it because I watched it probably like 20 times in the 90s. So I just got done watching it again, and then I watched it again twice in one day. Fucking amazing. I can't believe this was Frank Marshall's directorial debut. And this is a guy who was basically George Lucas and Steven Spielberg's best friend, who pretty much produced all the Indiana Jones movies and a bunch of other huge Hollywood hits. He's been producing movies for 40 years now, since 1973. And he also made another movie from 1993, Alive, which is also a phenomenal movie if you've never seen it. It's a survival movie about a plane crash in the Andes Mountains. That's all I'm going to say about that for right now. But on to Arachnophobia. I mean, great script, great performance, great characters, great cinematography. Really well thought out dialogue and lines throughout, and the spiders are actual spiders, and then there's some puppet and animatronics, but no CGI at all before the rise of CGI, because that's what it would have been nowadays. But you know, everyone can really relate to this one. It's one of the most common fears is spiders, the fear of spiders, along with, you know, heights and claustrophobia. But this is just amazing from the beginning. It just starts you off on the expedition, the Amazon expedition. It's about the spider where they end up going, and it brings you right into the action, where a photographer from California is being dropped off in the Venezuelan part of the Amazon. And they go to Tepui, which is supposed to be a mountain where species have survived in isolation for millions of years, and you're like, oh, this is badass. And he's like, are there any man-eating dinosaurs? Because you don't know what you're going to see at all. It's like one of those 50s horror comics where they'd go into the Amazon and they'd go to like one of those tribes where they'd be doing sacrifices. But instead, he meets an entomologist who's an insect expert. And they end up going on this, and then he's like, to get to the mountain, he's like, us small gamers, we don't climb, we fly. And then they do the credits and this awesome instrumental, and you're really feeling it, and they do these awesome aerial shots on a helicopter going through these cascading waterfalls across the mountain randomly somewhere in the Amazon. And they end up going down a sinkhole, as they describe it. And they end up going to this tree and smoking out all these insects, and he thinks he found a new species of butterfly, and then they hear a huge thud where they find the first spider, which is supposed to be a new species of spider, which just looks like a huge tarantula, you know, the stereotypical type of Venezuelan tarantula, but it's supposed to be a new species of spider. And they think it's dead because he smokes it with some sort of pesticides, so they're all fly out dead. That's just an awesome, amazing shot. And I'm pretty much going to do an in-depth kind of review. I mean, Atherton is just such an amazing character, because that's the scientist, Dr. Atherton, from the beginning. He's really the secondary villain. It all stems from his curiosity and his scientific exploration, and his reckless and negligence for the people around him led to all this eventually, where the spider ends up seeing the photographer who gets dropped off. You know, he's totally out of his element, so he kills the spider because they think it's dead, and then it jumps up at him. So he squashes it, and one of the living spiders up in another tree sees that, and they make these spiders have like a mind of their own. They're supposed to be really smart, and you can see them playing that, and it sounds really corny, but they really do it well, and the script's just awesome, and he ends up getting bit by the spider, and they think it was a fever, because that's where he was at. The photographer ends up getting bit by the spider, and they nail him in the coffin, and the spider hitches a ride to California, of all places, for script convenience, of course. And then from there, he mates with a male house, or with a queen house spider. Or she becomes the queen, and they end up making this huge nest in the barn, where Jeff Daniels and his family moves in, and I love Irv, the mortician. That's just a great character. John Goodman plays kind of like a boneheaded exterminator with a bunch of great one-liners, great comedic performance. And here's what happens. So people start dying off in the town, you know, and then Jeff Daniels slowly figures out that it might be a spider problem, and the doctor that's there isn't signing off on any of the autopsies until that old doctor dies. And he ends up calling the specialist, Dr. Atherton, to come down and check it out. And Atherton, of course, who has his new species, he has a living spider in, so they could do a sequel technically, where he has a spider at his own office from the Amazon. And he ends up sending one of his young assistants, who was playing foosball at the time. It's a hilarious scene. And he goes to check it out. You know, it's the spider in the Chex Mix box. Awesome. It scares the shit out of every time you open a box of cereal that something like that might come out. That's what that scene has done for me. And let's say this. So then they come up with this strategy, so then he's like, yo, this is beyond my expertise, people are dying, and Black Widows can't kill 3 people like this, and blah, blah, blah. So he ends up showing up, and he's like, did you get me a specimen? Julian Sands, awesome performance. I will be doing a villain profile on him coming up. Look forward to that. Oh, wait, here he is. Now you can see. So anyway, back to the story. So he ends up showing up in town, and the exterminator, John Goodman, he's only believes in what he sees, and he's been in the business for a while, and he doesn't used to spiders killing people or whatnot. So Atherton shows up and tells him that because they mated like this, and he sees their 3 venomous poison sacs, and he comes up and he theorizes that they got to find the master web and the master web sac, or the birthing sac that's pulsating, or else he's going to take over the town and the next town and eventually the world. And the scene where he ends up, his recklessness kind of like, and curiosity for scientific advancement leads to eventually his death, including a lot of other people's deaths throughout the movie. And like I was saying, and it's an amazing scene where he's like, Ma, you've been busy. Just to see him just like at the height of his profession, seeing something like that, it's like you just dreamed to write about characters like that. And he dangles the webbing of the spider web in the barn. He's like, supper's ready, come and get it. And he ends up getting all wrapped up, and John Goodman finds him when he flies through the cellar later, and he's all wrapped up, and that used to scare the shit out of me as a kid. So did when Marv dies, when they're eating fake butter on their popcorn. That scene's hilarious. And the whole ending when it takes over his farmhouse, and Jeff Daniels falls through the floor, and it's like a total stuntman doing a flip into the basement. It's like an amazing shot. And then he has to end up cracking his whole wine cellar, his whole investment. It's just hilarious. Just classic movie. And then the nail gun, even though it needs to be pressed up against something, he shoots it in midair. And you could see the spider like eyeing them and the flames coming back and the reflection. Just a bunch of amazing subtle scenes like that. And the Collins character was amazing. And A- is what I'm going to give this movie. That's how much I like it. If I'm going to see it twice in one day, of course I'm going to freaking like it that much. I mean, just a classic movie. And then the family ties scene where the spider's coming over the TV screen over Michael J. Fox's dome. Just a classic movie, and it's not all nostalgia. Like, I appreciate it more now that I'm older and you get more of it, and the dialogue and whatnot, and the whole story that they crafted marvelously. Don Jacoby and I can't remember who the other guy is, but definitely credit goes to them, and Frank Marshall. Everything they do, it's good. Frank Marshall and his wife Kathleen Kennedy, two of the best producers. They're now like basically running the Star Wars Lucasfilms division for Disney now. So I trust in them for episode 7, and we'll see how it comes. So this was JBM from Villain Radio. I'm out. Thanks for watching.